So where design for the environment is about designing a product or a process smarter, sometimes it's better just to eliminate something completely with a ban. So that's an approach that's been being used more and more recently. In my example on the screen here is Kenya, which had one of the earlier and more aggressive stances on banning plastic bags. And the article, if you click on it, is a bit of a retrospective on the few years that they've had it in place, and they have seen improvement, less litter on the street, but it's tough. It's not a silver bullet. A ban can feel really final. You say, no, the rule is there's none of it, but there's all these other ways where you can have other problems. So for example, people would start using reusable bags, but then they just make them so cheaply that they're functionally just single-use bags as well. So bans aren't always as easy as just banning something and the problem's over, but it does send a really strong signal to the market and to people that this is not an acceptable product to have. So it's a tool in the toolbox to use. And it's one that Canada has been looking into really seriously for single-use plastics. So this proposal just came out in October of this year to ban 6 single-use items and target a list of other items to reduce in other ways. And this is a really interesting approach. So I talked about in chapter 1 about the Ontario Environmental Protection Act. So this proposal actually uses the Federal Environmental Protection Act, SEPA. And the way it works on the ban side is it actually lists plastics on the same list as other toxic materials, and then allows them to be regulated federally. So it's kind of an interesting approach. In the table on the slide here, you can see on the leftmost side is those 6 items that are going to be banned. So plastic bags, stir sticks, 6-pack rings, food service items that are hard to recycle, straws, and cutlery. And those are under the heading SEPA instruments. So that's the ban under the Environmental Protection Act, the federal one. And then on the other half of the table, there's some other items that they're taking a different approach to. And we can see even in this table, there's this split between wanting to reduce foremost and then divert later. So on the left of the table is these are things they want to eliminate or reduce for them to market. There's really no good way to do it. We just want to get rid of them somehow. And then on the right side, these are things that could be useful that just aren't right now. So what are some tools we can use to deal with those? So this is kind of illustrates the split between when you might want to just reduce something, ban it, get rid of it, and when you might want to do design for the environment, keep it around, but make sure you're doing it in a way that's more sustainable than the way you're doing it now. And I'll put the link where you can click through this proposal if you are interested in diving into it a little bit more as well. And the last topic we're going to talk about on this pre-consumer side is extended or individual producer responsibility. So it's kind of exciting because the last few years I've done this course, I've just talked about it in the abstract, but now Ontario is putting into place this type of system. So on the left side of my slide is our traditional system of product production, selling to a person who uses it, and then the waste is collected by the municipality. So in this way, the cost of waste are externalized to municipality. The companies don't really have very much incentive to not put waste out in the world because they're not managing the waste. In Ontario, traditionally, for the last decade or so, we've had an extended producer responsibility model where the companies actually chip in half of the money to pay for the recycling system. But it's not really a closed system where they can really influence what's happening. And as a result, Ontario doesn't have great recycling rates, even though producers are responsible for half the costs. So what we've switched to is a more intensive extended producer responsibility system where the producers are really more directly involved, and that's sometimes called individual producer responsibility. So on the right side of the slide here, you can see at the bottom, instead of having the government as the person responsible, we've got the company responsible. So in this new system, the company is responsible for operating the collection system, not the city anymore. And the government's role is just to oversee this process. So we're creating this closed loop of the producer collecting the waste and then the producer marketing the waste again. So it's really easy for them to see what's coming back into their system and what they want to engineer a little bit differently. So they're diverting more. They make it easier for themselves to recycle it or reuse it. And it kind of just closes the loop and internalizes those costs. And the idea is this will incentivize them to perform better than the old linear system where they just kicked their waste down to the municipalities, and then the municipalities worried about it. So with more specifics on how it's actually going in Ontario, this is implemented under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, and there's the link to the proposed regulation there. You can click through it. So REPRA, the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, is the government oversight body in this case. The products that are regulated are, it's kind of interesting, all printed paper, packaging, and packaging-like products fall under this EPR system. So this includes things that weren't under our old Blue Box system. So we're getting a little bit more aggressive. And there's a list of the categories on the right side of the screen here and the diversion targets and how they change over time. And some of the targets are pretty low, like flexible plastic, for example. So that's like granola bar wrappers and cling film. Those are really tough to recycle, so we don't have a very high bar for them. So these, some of these targets could be a little bit more aggressive, but when you compare it to Ontario's current recycling rate, which is just under 50%, a lot of these are more aggressive than we're currently doing. So hopefully it will be an improvement. Some other specifics on the Ontario system is the producers are going to be required to operate the system we have now, which is called the Common Collection System, where we have our blue boxes on the curb, but they're also allowed to use different alternative collection systems. So if you can't get very good recovery with the blue box system, you are free to have other alternative systems to get those products back into your custody and to prove you're getting that diversion you're required. So that could look like mail back programs, drop-off depots, deposit programs. There's all sorts of other ways that those materials can get back into the system, not using the blue box or more effectively than the blue box. And since the company's operating the whole thing, they now have the freedom to use some of those systems. And then the last thing I'll point out about the Ontario blue box system is we have hundreds or thousands of producers who are selling products in Ontario that create packaging waste or paper waste, and they're all responsible for paying for this system. So how does it work where you have all these people all trying to serve the whole province? Well, the way it's proposed in the legislation is that every year, producers or organizations operating on behalf of producers, these are called producer responsibility organizations, will take a map of the province. They'll look at the kind of the market share of each one and then carve up the map so each one is responsible for a part of the province that is commensurate with the amount of waste they put out there. So rather than having 20 recycling bins out back, one for each producer, we have 20 regions in Ontario and one producer takes responsibility for each one. So we'll see how that works and how successful those negotiations are, but that was Ontario's way of just trying to navigate the number of producers we have and all the areas we have and simplify it a little bit, even though it's going to be really complicated. And you can see in the map on the screen when municipalities will be transitioning. So the ones in yellow are the ones that are going first. City of Toronto is going to be part of that cohort. They're going to be the biggest one going, and they'll set a lot of examples for everyone else following them. So we'll see how that goes. It's coming up really quickly. I'm excited to see what happens and if EPR can produce some of the results that it has the potential to in Ontario.